You're good.
Oh, how's it going, guys? Welcome to Between Two Slopes. And today we're breaking down ski boots, which is going to be awesome because it's like the number one question out of a ski shop is ski boot related.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the time. Just want to say, super stoked to have you guys here. This is, I think, our third live episode.
Is it only our third?
Third or fourth, yeah.
Okay.
Right? And just super stoked to be doing this season. We are here Between Two Slopes to give you guys the ins and the outs of everything skis, everything snowboards, right? We're going to hit on how the season's going, give you guys live updates as the season goes on, and just get you all up to speed on knowledge on gear and everything else you could think of. So, right? And like Trent said, we're in for a special one today. We got a treat.
Yes, ski boots.
Boots. And snowboard boots.
And snowboard boots. Snowboard boots aren't quite as technical, but still valuable. And I think,
absolutely,
like fit-wise. And I think we might even touch a little bit on snowboard bindings because that's where they get their stiffness from.
Right.
So,
yep. I love that you say that. We're ready to hop in, so let's do it.
Let's do it. So first off, let's talk about the different kinds of ski boots. Like what's the difference between this ski boot, and then, so this is Austin's boot, and my boot's actually pretty similar, but there are a couple differences that are worth pointing out. So why don't you go ahead, lay us out, differences in ski boots, maybe
absolutely,
the differences between these particular ones.
Yeah. So when it comes to choosing boots, okay, well, first off, boots are the number one most important investment you are going to make in getting your ski gear.
I totally agree.
There's a lot of stuff that we can buy used. There's a lot of stuff that we can rent. The one thing that I always say you should purchase new are your ski boots, right? And it all comes down to comfort on the mountain.
I say you marry your boots, but you date your skis, right?
Yeah.
Because you can click into any ski with your boots, but you can't just step into any boot and go ride.
Absolutely. And when you buy a ski boot, you're generally going to keep it for a long time.
Totally.
I think I bought these back in about 2018, I want to say.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got mine in that same time frame.
Yeah, we're talking 6 to 5 years. And honestly, still loving them, still working great, which also we're going to give you some tips on how to keep your gear nice, clean, and keep it from deforming and just working well. Right. So first, like you said, I'm going to hop in and I will tell you guys about the different types of ski boots you can get. Right. Today, we're going to focus mostly on your more recreational, downhill, in resort type ski boots. There are stuff that you can cross and do hybrid with backcountry skiing. There's backcountry touring specific boots. Same goes for snowboard boots. There's actually backcountry touring specific snowboard boots and whatnot. But we're going to focus on more inbounds and maybe some hybrid style ski boots. Okay.
Yeah.
When we look at ski boots, there are basically a few different categories. I'd say probably about 3 different main categories on how we break ski boots down. One would be, first is going to be like the type of ski boot it is, as we said, inbounds or out of bounds type skiing. Second is going to be the stiffness of a ski boot. Okay. Breaking it down by what level of flex that it has, right? And that usually ranges, really starts at about 0 to 140.
Yep.
Right.
Once you get past like 130, you're getting into race territory, but you're spot on.
Yeah. So, and when you start talking about adult ranges versus kids and women's ranges, we'll give you those too as we start to cover them. Right. So that would be the second category, is how stiff your ski boot is. And third is really going to come down to sizing, and not just sizing as far as like how long your foot is. I'm talking more about volume of the boot and width of the boot. Okay. I like to lump those together because, as you'll see, width and volume of a boot oftentimes go hand in hand. They shouldn't, but they oftentimes do.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how we really break ski boots down. Okay. You have anything you would add to that?
Like one thing that really sticks out to me about ski boots is also like their shape. You have like this is considered like a 2-piece shape. So you've got like your upper cuff here and your lower cuff here, or your lower shell here. But then you have something called a cabrio, or a 3-piece. And that's something familiar to like a full tilt. They're not called full tilt anymore.
Right. Dalbello.
Yeah, Dalbello has a ton of them. Those two shapes are important to understand because the way they flex is different. Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
100%. No, I'm glad you bring that up, and I think that would say even kind of falls into our type 1 of the category, the type, right? Type of ski boot that can, and maybe design should be a better name for that than type, right? Design of the ski boot itself, right? So yeah, let's hop in and talk about it. So first, Trent, I'm going to ask you, would you explain the benefits and really what is flex of a ski boot?
Oh yeah.
Because I think that flex is one of the most commonly mentioned, terms when it comes to ski boot shopping. And let's even break down a myth here. Okay.
Yes.
So I want you to explain to us what flex is. And second, tell me, when it comes to buying a ski boot, should you buy the stiffest boot possible?
Absolutely not.
Commonly asked question.
Yes.
Okay. This is a common myth.
Super common. So, I don't know if you guys can see, I'll hold it up better, but this says 90, this says 120, and mine say 120. So here
right. We got a bunch of different areas. You'll find them on the ski boots themselves.
Here, I'll hold this up better. Right here says 120. So that's referring to the flex rating, right? And the higher that number is, and it usually goes up by 5s, but most of the time it goes up by 10s.
Right.
That number is referring to how stiff the boot is. So the stiffer the boot, the more responsive the boot is. However, the stiffer the boot, the more demanding the boot is, right?
Right.
Because you have to put more work and effort into getting that boot to flex in order to get your turn, right? Ski boots don't perform in this shape, right? Right here. You want it to flex and engage, and that's when you start getting comfort and performance. So if you can't get your boot to flex, it's too stiff.
I got you.
Right? So that's one thing. The other thing to keep in mind is this number is kind of arbitrary.
Absolutely.
And the reason I say that is, it's just like a benchmark more than anything else, because a Solomon's 120 does not equal a Technica's 120, and a Technica doesn't equal an Atomic, right?
Right.
All of these are very different. Some are pretty close, but like Rosignol's usually run soft. I feel like Atomics and like K2s run pretty true. So in my experience, I've seen that Solomon's run a little stiff, and same with Technicas.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I love that you say that. I mean, just like we mentioned with snowboards and skis, snowboards, very commonly, you will find a flex rating on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said, now this is an arbitrary number. The whole idea is to give you just some sort of basis to understand where you fall within that brand's stiffness rating. Right. So I'll find, like Trent said, 120s on a Solomon will be a ton stiffer than a Rosignol 120.
Yep.
Right. But if I'm riding like a Dolabello, they might be even stiffer.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the fun part about ski boots and what makes them so confusing is really that there are so many on the market. And it's because, just like shoes, like everyone's got a different foot,
mm-hmm.
right? Ski boots do not fit the same for each person, right? Trent's boot's going to fit very differently than how my boot would feel, because we have different anatomy when it comes to our feet structures.
Yeah.
Right. So love that you bring that up. So now hit this myth for us. Why, what's the purpose of this flex, and why can't I just buy the most stiff one? Isn't that the best?
Yeah. If you're walking into a shop and you go to the wall and you see like 130s are the highest price, right? Because they have the most like tech and gear and
right. So it's obviously
so they're the best, right?
And more money is better.
And here's the thing: your tech is gonna walk in and tell you that one's the best,
right?
And that's what's insane.
That's probably a sign you should watch out for that.
Yeah, go to a different place. And there's even like the stigma that if you're not riding like a super stiff boot, you're not good. Right.
Absolutely.
But really it comes down to, each individual skier. I would never put a beginner skier in a 120 because it's just too much boot for them. It's not going to react. It's not going to feel comfortable for them. And they're not going to get the performance they want out of it. Right. Whereas like someone like Austin, who's been skiing for years and years and years and has developed those muscles and is a little taller than the average bear, he's going to be able to get a boot to flex the way he wants it in order to get that performance, right? Like if you take a 17-year-old kid who weighs 120 pounds and put him in this boot, he'll have a terrible day,
right?
Because he'll just never get it to flex right, and then he won't get his ski to perform the way he wants it to.
Right. So you bring up a great point. when it comes to determining flex, there are multiple factors. And this is like, flex is one of the first things I start off when somebody comes in looking for a ski boot, right? I'm going to say we already narrowed down where they're skiing, because I'm going to assume they came into my shop and we sell mostly in resort type boots.
Right.
Okay. The next question is really, how good of a skier are you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you weigh? How tall are you? Are you male or female? Right? Yeah. Those factors are going to determine what type of boot I put them in. Okay. And a lot of this is going to determine at what flex rating. Because flex is really that amount that we can flex the boot forward, that allows the boot to engage so you get proper skiing performance. It allows the boot to then flex properly into the ski. Mm-hmm. So the ski actually performs better, right? These are just very important factors. Now, the more you weigh, the taller you are, the more muscular your build or athletic you are, I should say, like harder you're skiing. Generally the stiffer of a boot you're going to need.
Yes.
Now, I say need instead of want, because just because you are 180 pounds and you lift weights at the gym every day doesn't mean you need to have a top tier 140 flex ski boot. It's going to be too much.
Yeah.
Right. And especially if you are just starting. Right. And I have people that do that and they're like, nah, man, I'm good. Like,
Yeah. And then they have a
mountain bike all the time.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, because that translates
perfectly. Yeah.
So it's important to get something that's going to fit your skiing ability and not just jump to the top.
Right. Exactly.
So,
and honestly, like, I've been skiing since I was 5, and though my boot's a 120, I've actually altered it to ride more like a 110, right? Because, I'm 6'1", 190 pounds. I could get a 120 to flex and like no problem. But I don't want to have to work harder. I want my gear to work for me, right? Absolutely. I don't want to work for it. And so if I can get the performance that I want out of a 110 and not have to put so much energy into each turn, that means my day is going to be longer. My legs are going to be less tired. I'm going to have more fun and enjoyment, right? So
absolutely.
There's these different things. And so don't let your shop tech or your buddy tell you that if you're not riding a 120 or a 130, you're not a good skier.
Right. Or just because you can, you should.
Right.
Right. You can ski a lot of things. Doesn't mean you should.
Preach.
Right. Now, I know we're drilling on the negative here, but this is an important topic. And I've seen this make or break people's days on the mountain, especially for beginners. Yeah. So I'm glad we're hitting that thoroughly. Last thing I would say is just something short to remember this by is just the more flexible of a boot you get, generally, the more comfort and ease you're going to have in that boot.
It's also going to be easier to get on.
Yep, a lot easier. And then the more stiff of a boot you're going to have, generally, the more performance. It'll be less comfortable, though.
Yes.
Okay. More performance you're going to have, the more pushback, so you can actually lean into your boot. Which brings up another point of you don't want to just err on the side of like too much flex, because you can then overwork your legs by having to support yourself, right?
Yes.
So
I feel like that's a huge thing. I remember Austin and I were working in the shop together, and someone came in with a kid's boot, and they're like, "Well, this fits fine," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you are muscling this boot," and it just it just creates a lot of overwork, right? Because you're not,
Absolutely.
It's not working for you. You're overpowering it.
Absolutely. And it's a fine balance. And I love the stories now. When it comes to boot fitting, boot fitting is one of my favorite topics, because you just get to meet the craziest of people and the best of people when fitting someone for a ski boot. It's like you're in this weird, intimate discussion when you're looking at somebody's foot for some reason.
It's almost like taking someone on a date, because you got to be like, what are your hobbies? Right. How often are you doing this? Like, how often are you skiing? Tell me about your foot. Tell me about your arch. Right? Like all these questions.
You got to know everything, right? Now, I remember I've had a few people that come in, and the unfortunate part is there is something when it comes to the comfort of ski boots. And I'm going to have to break it to you. Ski boots are not always comfortable.
Rarely.
Okay? Now,
rarely comfortable.
Right? We have progressed so far. And ski boots, honestly, are so much more comfortable than they ever were before.
Preach.
And it's amazing. Yeah. However, they're not designed to fit like your regular shoe.
Yep.
Okay. And I've had a few people come into my shop and ask me, hey, that would say like, I'm 250 pounds and 6 foot, and I just want a comfortable ski boot, right? I want to be able to just ski all day without my feet killing me. Okay. Now I'm not going to go give them the lowest flex boot possible. They'll come in and say, and I don't want to spend a lot of money, so here's $250 and get me something I'm going to be happy with, right? Unfortunate part is you got physics working against you at that point.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So you need a boot that's going to give you the support so that you can ride all day. So that's where you're going to be over flexing a boot for $250. You're going to find things that are like 60 flex, 70 flex.
Yeah.
And if you're a 6 foot, 250 pound male,
you're going to destroy that boot.
Yeah. I'm going to be putting you in a 90, probably 100 flex.
I would.
Right?
I'd be trying 100s on you. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're going to be making a bigger investment, but you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
You're going to be lasting. Right? But don't expect this to solve every problem.
Yeah.
We'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've got like shape down and kind of fit. Let's move on to, let's move on to volume a little bit. Tell us about like, so if I go into a shop and they bring me this and they measure the width of my foot and I put this on as squeezing my foot, like what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. No, great question. Yeah. So like you said, it looks like we do have a question on here that we can answer. But our next topic, and I'll answer this question first, but our next topic will be on sizing. Right? Because we talked about fit a little bit, about like the comfort of a ski boot, really relating to flex. But it is important that we talk about sizing, on how to properly buy a ski boot sized to you correctly. Right?
Yes.
And that's where volume comes into play.
Absolutely.
Right? So Trent, why don't you go ahead and hit us with our first question here.
Okay. Learn to Fern says, how do I know if I need a different boot or if I just need to suck it up as far as comfort goes?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Great question. I love that you bring that up. You should never be going through a day all in pain without asking that question and asking somebody who's a professional. Really, I would say go see a boot fitter, right? But there are things you can do yourself, and can I pinpoint this? I don't want to go spend $150, $200 with a boot fitter, like Learn to Fern just said.
Yeah.
Right. If I really just need to suck it up.
Right.
What do you think, Trent?
So really, like, I'm going to rewind just a little bit back to like the beginning of your buying process. Okay. So you go into a shop and they fit you. It should be 90% fit to you off the rack, off the shelf. Yeah. Right. And when you go and ski it, if you skiing it will break it in that additional 10%. So then you're at 100% fit. If you've skied it 5 times, maybe 6, if you're not going a ton, or like not, your day isn't super long. After about that time, it should be fully broken in. And if it's not and it's still hurting your feet, go talk to somebody. There could be some things that you're still doing wrong, right? Like if you're not fully engaged in that boot and you're not getting it to flex properly, it's not going to be comfortable, right? If you're hitting different terrain that you're not ready for, and so you can't hold your form in that terrain, your boot's going to be uncomfortable, right? So really it would be, does this boot feel good on groomers or on terrain that I am confident on? Yeah. And if it's not, then maybe go look at a solution.
No, I love that. I think that's a great answer, especially when we're talking about buying a boot brand new off the shelf, right? I want to hit a point of, what if you have boots that you've already bought and you're just unsure, do they hurt or what's going on, right? And I feel like I definitely probably played a little bit too much into the ski boots are uncomfortable, right? Mostly just from past experiences, with family members that just complain maybe, right? So thank you for asking this question, and I'm going to hit a little bit on it here too. One is recognizing where the pain is coming from.
Yes,
right?
I think that's great.
So when we say ski boots are uncomfortable, I really even don't like that phrase as much as it is to say skiing is an active sport.
Yeah.
It's, it's going to try your muscles, and you are going to be fatigued at the end of the day, right? Most likely you're going to find some tired points. So it's recognizing, okay, am I getting pain or discomfort from my muscles feeling like they're maybe tensing up? I'm just feeling like they're aching a little bit. Is that coming from the bottom of my foot? Is that coming from The ankle joint specifically, usually muscle aches is something that's a little more part of the sport. You may start the day fine, a few hours go in and you're doing good, and next thing you know, you're starting to kind of tire out, and it comes on gradually. Okay, that's a good sign that you're just having maybe some muscle aches because you haven't skied much, or you're skiing super hard and you're just, your muscles are aching a little bit, right? And that part is a normal part of skiing, right? And that's the part where ski boots may feel uncomfortable. The other part where they may feel uncomfortable is just because it's a tight, snug fit. Okay, you may feel a little bit of pressure on the sides of the foot, really up in the toes is the most common spot I hear it, and sometimes around the ankle. Okay, now as long as that pressure isn't something that's significantly bothering you, then you're okay. That's something that's going to be pretty normal. The thing to look out for are what we call hot spots and sharp pains. Okay, sharp zinging pains, feeling like a needle just went through your skin, anything like that is a telltale sign first to say stop, there's something wrong. Okay, hot spots are usually areas where rubbing is occurring. Okay, if your foot is sliding in that boot because it's actually too big, will be a problem. If your foot is even cramping up too much, that's a good sign that you maybe have a boot a little too small. Okay. And then the other thing I would mention is being aware of pain at the bottom of the foot and in the archway. Okay. Now that wouldn't be something that I would say, oh, you need a new boot, right? But that would be just something to say, hey, let's take a look at insoles. Right? There's a lot that we can do to make your boot fit perfect for your foot without having to buy a $600 brand new boot.
Yep, totally. Well, one thing I actually wanted to touch on that you talked about, and it comes with a little bit of a story, is people would come into the ski shop, they'd try boots on, and usually at the ski shop, your tech is not fitting you to size with a ski boot. They're giving you something a little too big.
I would say majority of common employees at a ski shop, if they're not a designated boot fitter, then they're probably going to give you a comfort fit, right? Which generally errs on the side too big.
Or if you're renting, if you're renting, you're not getting a boot your size. So then if you say this boot is too small and you go up a size, because ski boots don't come in half sizes, so you got to jump a whole size. If your tech knows what they're doing and is worth their salt, they'll advise you to not go up a size, because a boot that is too big will often cause more pain than a boot that is either the right size or too small.
Absolutely.
And the reason that is because this movement that you're talking about, these hot spots, people are like, my toes hurt all the time. It's because there's too much movement in your boot. You're just hitting up against it the whole day, so.
I love that. And that really jumps us into our next topic, which is sizing.
Yes.
Right? And just so I'm not leaving people out, and like you said at the beginning of this episode, we're really focusing a lot on ski boots here. This knowledge and this type of idea with ski boots does translate to snowboard boots.
Yes, it does.
Especially when it comes to fit. Now, we have a lot of leeway with snowboard boots, which is why I don't spend as much time on them. In that snowboard boots can fit a little bit closer to your shoe size.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You don't want your foot to be sliding. So I oftentimes still size down from my shoe size because I don't want my foot sliding back and forth. But you can have a little bit more room. You're getting a lot of your performance coming from just having a nice snug fit that fits like a nice comfortable glove on your foot with a snowboard boot. There are different stiffnesses as well, but they're not really rated. It's more of a try on and see how it feels. And you get most of your stiffness performance out of the binding itself.
And that's what we kind of talked on at the beginning. Another thing I want to say is about snowboard boots is you have like laces versus boa.
Oh yeah.
You want to speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll even hit on it because guess what? For all you big skiers, I'm excited. There are BOA ski boots being released. Solomon has their Shift Pros, man. They're amazing. They're super expensive because apparently having a corded dial-up system adds another $200, but it's got to be worth it. Right? The idea of a BOA system, and when it comes to really snowboard boots, a big difference, like you said, is really just that lace-up system. Right here, I've got a standard lace boot, right? You just have your laces like your regular shoe, cross them, tighten them. They work great.
Right.
Never going to go out of style just because they're simple.
Yeah.
Right. Benefits of a lace boot for all you snowboarders out there is really that you get to dial in your tightness and your hot spot, your tightness spots a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay. It can be a little difficult because you can't always tighten things up by hand super well. But you do get to kind of customize if you want a little bit tighter on the last width, which is going to be across the foot here. Or if you want it a little bit tighter up around your shin, right? To just help suck in and help that boot fit like a glove.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. And then you've got BOA systems on a boot. Some even have 2 BOA systems. One in the upper part here, actually it's usually here. And then the other one will be down here. And those are just really locking in different parts of the boot to really give you that glove feel that Austin was talking about.
Right. Just to give you guys something, if you haven't seen a BOA before, for any of you that are like brand new to the sport, I've got a BOA. Most you'll see them oftentimes on the back of helmets. You'll just see right here in the back. There's a little dial. Okay. You'll usually say BOA across unless it's got its own brand name. Okay. Right. When you twist that, it tightens. When you pull out or twist the other way, it's going to loosen.
And one thing that's valuable to know is it doesn't tighten just like sometimes helmets when you tighten the BOA or tighten like the thing in the back, it just sucks in the back. Right. BOA is 360 degrees of tightening, right? So I kind of
sidetracked.
Yes, I did. But
before we move on from that, I want to hit the last system on snowboard boots because we can't forget the speed lace.
Oh gosh, I hate speed lace.
And then we'll move back onto ski boots here, right? But it is a boot you're going to find out there usually, if not only by Burton.
Yeah.
Right. That still does the speed lace. Speed lace came out right before BOA, and then BOA kind of just blew them out of the water because everyone likes BOA. It's just easier to turn than it is to pull. Okay. Speed lace, all it is really a simple system, having a separate lacing for the bottom of the boot and one for the top. Instead of having to tie it, you pull, basically just pull the laces up.
Basically just like pull as hard as you can.
And then tuck the laces down.
Yeah.
So it just locks them in place. Simple, easy, nothing wrong with it. Just BOA is easier.
Yeah. They can be, I've had some people who like pull it really hard and then they have like a ton of extra cord.
Right.
And then they tuck it in and it causes pain.
Sometimes they shred and rip.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. But if you take care of them, and I'm sure there's people out there that swear by them, so
absolutely, yeah, it's still popular among some Burton riders.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Yeah.
All right, back to fit.
All right, yes. So we were just mentioning here, and if you have any questions, please shoot them out in the chat.
Yeah.
Or if you're watching this after our live stream, send us a message.
Yeah, leave us a comment. We'd love to help you out with boots.
Right. I know some of the stuff we've covered in detail. Hopefully we didn't go too overboard. But there's a lot of questions when you start trying these on yourself, and you'll realize why. This is something that people spend $200-$300 for somebody to just customize their boots for them because they're having pain or having issues, right? Got a new question up here in the chat, Trent. Why don't you read that to us?
It says, is it kosher to buy used boots or to borrow someone else's boots? Great question.
I love the word kosher.
Yeah.
Because is it chill? Is it cool? Sure. Why not? Right? Do you want to do this long term? That's probably the better question here,
yeah.
Right?
And I would say no. You don't want to do it long term, but let's say it's your first time skiing, like, and you don't want to spend all this money on boots or rent. Yeah, borrow somebody's boots. Just make sure, one thing that's huge is make sure that your bindings are set to you still, right? Because your boots are going to be set to your bindings, or your bindings are going to be set to your boots in a specific way.
Right.
So if you like borrow your buddy's boots and then you get on your skis, the binding might not release correctly.
Right.
And that can be a real problem.
Very, very important, which we do speak to in our binding adjustment video that we posted, right? The other factor is, I will mention, is it kosher to borrow boots? I see nothing wrong with borrowing a boot, renting a boot, having a used boot for some time. I will tell you this, first thing you should always do though, it has to fit right.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit, you're likely going to end up having a terrible time on the mountain or hurting yourself. Now, it can be slightly big, slightly small, like I'm talking half a size, or just like a little in one direction, right, you're fine.
Yeah.
But I have known people that are like, hey, basically saying, I have a size 10 shoe, and can I borrow yours? And you're like, oh, mine are size 12s.
Yeah.
Probably gonna end up having a boot that's 2 sizes too big for me, which is going to cause significant pain even after 1 day of skiing.
Yeah.
Okay. And can be potentially dangerous because of the binding mechanism.
Yeah. And one thing I want to speak to too, if you're buying a used boot, just know that it won't break into you, right? Because it's already broken into the past user. Unless it's been like, skied one time, right? Then it still has some mobility in the liner there. But if you're going to a secondhand shop and there's a boot that's a really good deal and you can tell it's got 10 plus days on it, if you try it on and it feels really good, great. If you try it on and you're like, oh, I could break this in and then it'll be good. No, it's pretty spent. Like, you're not going to break it in anymore.
Absolutely. So you may get lucky. You may strike gold. It may fit perfect.
Yep.
You may not have any problems. You just get away with upgrading the insole, right? Or whatever that is. That is a great way to go. Great way to save money. However, just remember, you marry your boots.
Yes.
You date your skis.
That's right. That's right.
So if you're going to spend money anywhere, this is the place to do it.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get across here.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for that question.
That was solid.
It was a great one. So let's talk a little bit about this, though, on sizing. And I know we're probably going to end up pushing time a little bit today, but I love boots.
Yeah, this is a good episode.
Right?
It's right before Christmas. This is our gift to you.
Right. So, we're going to take this example that Learn to Fern mentioned to us here. And, whether you're buying a new or a used boot, you got to have it fit right.
Right.
Okay. So what should a ski boot fit like, and how do I size myself? Right. Now, first thing I will say, especially with ski boots, so ski boots versus snowboard boots. Snowboard boots go off the same U.S. measuring system. I don't even know what we call that. The standard measuring system for shoes in the U.S., whether it's size 8, 9, 10, etc. Right? If it's a women's specific boot, it's going to follow the women's ruling. Mm-hmm. Usually that's about a size and a half down from a men's shoe, right? So if you're buying a men's boot and you're a woman rider, but you want one that's the men's version, they're the same, but have a different look, go for it. Just be aware of the sizing change, right? Ski boots, completely different.
Yes.
They run off the European Mondo sizing.
Yes, Mondo point.
Mondo point. All right. It's actually a really cool sizing chart.
Yeah.
Right. It really has to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it a little bit more of a measurement?
Yeah, it's
literally like centimeters.
Yeah, it's basically literally centimeters.
Yeah. So it's going to tell you your foot length basically in centimeters. We're talking now, you're going to see numbers like 23.5, 27.5. Okay. There's a really cool trick though, and I'm going to teach it to you right now on how to guess your Mondo point size. Right. Best thing to do when fitting yourself, first, go to a ski shop and just measure yourself. They'll do it for free. They're not going to charge you. You can just walk right out. They won't care.
No.
Right? You're going to want to do this with your ski socks on, preferably. Socks, I mean, you could do it barefoot. Socks don't make that big of a difference when it comes to that sizing, unless you're like trying to double up or triple up.
And I strongly recommend that you never double up your socks.
I knew Trent was going to hop in right there. I was like, we might need to take a half-hour break to talk about this. But for the sake of just sizing, before we give you the tip on why not to double up on your socks, just use one sock.
Just use one sock, please.
Even if it's a cotton sock, which is the worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
Just use one sock.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll tell you a little bit about socks probably here at the end, and we can even do a whole other episode on accessories.
Yeah. Okay. That might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Do goggles and helmets too.
Yeah. Okay. So once you measure yourself, you'll get that sizing. A good guesstimate on it for you is going to be the addition trick. Okay. Yeah. So what I've got here is a ski boot that is a 26.5. Now, oftentimes, if you're unsure or you are buying used, you can oftentimes look at the bottom of the boot. This one's going to tell me right here at the bottom. It's going to be really hard for you to see on the camera, if anything, but just know it's right there. You'll often see it on the bottom corner somewhere or on the back of the boot or maybe a sticker. Okay.
Yeah.
So with this boot, a 26.5, how do I get the sizing for it? Okay. I'm going to take the first two numbers and add them together. So 26, 2 plus 6 gives me an 8. The 0.5 is just a half. It's a half size. So that's an 8.5 size ski boot.
Yep.
All right. Now, guess what size of shoe I wear, Trent?
10.
10. Right on.
Nailed it.
Right?
Yeah.
So now, like we had mentioned, your shoes do not translate over, right? So the next size up for me, though, would be a 27.5. 2 plus 7 would be 9, about a 9.5. That's actually a lot more accurate to what I would be riding if I was going for a more comfort fit.
Yeah.
Because I am skiing very aggressively, I like to size down in my ski boots and make them a lot more snug, a lot more of a performance fit to a ski boot, right? And that's why you'll see, hey, he's a 10. Why is he riding an 8.5? Does that trick actually work? Right. So when it comes to a general sizing estimate, it actually does. It's actually pretty accurate.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, which is really cool. But there's always a reason to try on the ski boot before you purchase it.
Please try on a boot. Or if you're buying a boot online, really do your best to measure yourself and then buy the boot, but make sure they have a really good return policy, right?
Absolutely.
Get the boot, try it on at home, buckle it up, walk around, flexing it, make sure it feels good.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
So it looks like we've got a question here.
Yes. Got Chelsea Chic.
Yes. She says, I have a coworker whose young kids are at an age of growing out of their ski boots and want to buy new ones, but they're scared they will quickly grow out of them too. Any advice? Great question.
Great question.
One thing I would ask is, how many kids do they have? Right? Because let's say, for my particular instance, I have a daughter who's 3 and a son who's 1, and I bought these bad boys right here.
Oh, look how cute.
And so I plan on, using these, they're for my daughter right now, but I plan on using them for my son also. So usually they can, as one grows out, you can grow in. But if you have a teenager that's grown like a weed, it's hard. If they're really skiing aggressively, size them to what their ability wants to be, is what I'd say. So let's say you have a 14-year-old, they're not quite done growing, they're skiing really aggressive, get them the size of boot that they should be, and then get ready to buy another pair. But you could also sell your old pair online.
Yeah.
Then the other thing I would say is if they're not skiing super aggressively, don't be afraid to size up one, right? And then you could get another season, or maybe that could be their permanent boot if they grow into it and then stop,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. Thank you, Chelsea, for asking that. Really appreciate it. I want to mention here too, when we're talking about kids ski boots, because I love that you bring that up, it's a whole nother topic. Fitting is generally the same. However, with most kids under the age of 12, they aren't usually skiing hyper aggressively, right? If we were to rate them as a type skier, 1, 2, and 3, I think the most we usually see is about a type 2 skier. Usually still even skiing type 1, which doesn't mean they're bad, just means they're not skiing very aggressive. Right. With that being said, we're talking usually people that are under 120 pounds, usually smaller in height. There's not a ton of leverage going against them. The amount of wear going on this liner is the same type of liner as a lot of these adult boots. You're really not getting a ton of compression that's wearing the ski boot down hyper significantly. Yeah. If that's even a term. Right?
It is now
coined. Meaning that there's nothing wrong with buying a used kid ski boot.
No, not at all.
You're not torturing your child by making them ski a used boot. It's a very good way to save on some money. I would suggest, and I would say it would be better to have them sized correctly. It's okay to size up one size, especially if they aren't skiing super aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. If these kids are skiing type 2 to type 3 types, skier types, meaning they're doing blues, going into blacks. Really, blacks is where you're going to start noticing a significant ability for your foot to start shifting into that boot. That's where you're going to have more pain issues. Mm-hmm. So it's most important to get a proper fitting boot. If they are doing a performance type skiing and you just don't want them to their foot's still growing, and so You don't need to get them a big boot, just get them a proper fitting boot that sizes correctly, because as their foot grows, it'll just get a little bit more snug, but it's actually not going to cause as much pain as going too big.
Yes, I agree. We got another question. It says, tiny ski boots adorable. That's not a question.
Yeah.
Those are adorable.
17 and a half, right?
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the kids ski boots, once you're below the 20 mark, that the addition trick works.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So
It's
just keep that in mind. It doesn't really
Yeah.
work for kids' boots and stuff, but
Mhm.
it is a fun trick for adult boots.
Yeah.
So, all right, 2 girls. They are starting to do blacks, so great advice on the fit. That helps.
Heck yeah, great.
Yeah.
Love to help.
And, you know, it's just something to remind them. If your coworker is like slightly concerned about that, just tell them, hey, having a proper fitting ski boot not only is going to be more comfortable, but it's going to help your skier to grow and become a better skier.
Yes,
So
it's going to help them progress a ton.
Yeah. Don't hinder their performance. Let them have a great day on the mountain.
Exactly. We got another question. Your favorite brand of boots and why? From Ethan. Oh, that's a good one.
Trent, you want to go first?
Yeah,
you know what
I
mine
do.
is.
I do know what yours is. Ours is actually pretty similar. You know, it depends on the skier a little bit. Sometimes there are people who come into the shop and they're like, oh, like, I'm the baddest skier on the mountain. And I'm like, yeah, how many days you got? They're like, oh, man, I've got 5 days this year, right? And it's March or April. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're real bad. But you can put them in, like, there's certain things you can do to make it seem like they're really up to snuff, and they're not. Anyways, but for me personally, I love Atomic boots. I think they fit really well. They have a really cool, system of last, right? They've got, they hit all their bases, and they've even developed a hybrid boot that's not, it's like a mock hybrid boot. So it only has pins in the front. I think they're really great, and I think they've got a really great team developing them. So yeah, I'd probably say Atomic. They don't fit my foot very well, but they break in really well. So,
which honestly, that last sentence you just said there,
I know
it's perfect to explain this, right? Because we'll hit 2 points. What are our favorite boots? But also, one, I'm going to say two, what you can say, what boot you ride.
Yeah.
But really, when it comes down to fitting a boot, it's more important to have a boot that fits than it is to have a specific brand.
Right. Your foot picks your boot more than you do. So, like,
yes,
I ski this Technica Mach 1, and it has never been 100% great. My foot, I have a pretty high arch, and Technicas aren't super forgiving, so I've had to do a lot of work on this boot to get it to even let my toes have feeling. Right.
So why did you buy this boot? Real quick before I give my answer.
Yeah, great. Great
it doesn't
question.
fit,
So,
right?
yeah,
or it does fit, but
before I purchased this boot, or before I knew all of my stuff I know now, I went boot shopping and I was like, this boot looks sick. It's a 120, great. And then I bought it, and then I started working in a ski shop and learning more, and I was like, this probably wasn't the greatest boot for me. But, one thing that Technica's got going for it is it's really easy to do adjustments with this boot.
Right.
You can see it's like dimpled here. I don't know if you guys can see very well, but it makes it so that's easier to do any shell punches. Also, the liner is easier to work on, which I've had to shave material off the top where my high arch hits. But yeah, so like it's a great boot in the fact that I've been able to make adjustments to it to, get it where I've skied it for as many years as I have. But if I were to buy a boot today, I'd have to try on a lot, but I bet a Dalbella would fit my high arch better than anything else would.
I was thinking the same.
Even though Atomics are really cool, Dalbella would probably fit my boot.
There's actually a few options. You may, Atomics done some really good stuff with their Magnas.
Yes.
Right? On creating specific last widths that have a higher instep, which is where you generally have on the top of your foot where we have problems, right?
We've got huge problems there. Okay, your turn.
Right? Well, I wanted to mention on there too, a big problem that ski employees have is that we get great discounts at times, and sometimes on very specific items.
Very specific.
And I know Technica is one of those too, that I've actually had a lot of employees buy Technicas because of the price point. So that's what I was expecting you to say.
No.
And it's a common one that said, hey, well, this one was cheaper.
I didn't get it on sale.
We know the knowledge, we still fall for those traps, right? So I'll say my favorite boot here, personally, I love Solomon. Right, Trent and I are both Amer Sports guys.
Yeah,
Amer Sports is the parent company to these brands, and they actually have a lot of similarities between like Atomic and Solomon. Now, Solomon boots, and Solomon has actually been in the foot industry for a long time. Yeah. They do running shoes, they do waterproof hiking boots, and I love all of their gear. And it's just always fit my foot well, which is just a great bet when I started boot shopping. Right, I started in a Technica. Yeah. And it wasn't Technica's fault. For me, the first boot I had being Technica was sized a little too big. It was a 28.5, which was a 10 and a half. And knowing my shoe size was a 10 and it was saying it was a 10 and a half bigger, it should, would have been a sign. This was my first boot. I was just starting. I had no clue, right? I'd never skied before. When I started moving into Solomon, what I found is Solomon generally provides a very snug fit in their boots. You usually are going to have a lower instep, which is going to be over here. The instep, if you don't know, really is that between the shin and the top of the foot area, right? It's
like the ankle.
Like the ankle, right? But the ankle, usually we refer to the sides, but we're just talking if you were to rotate over 90 degrees, you'd be on the instep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for myself, having a very small instep, it was important for me to have something that would snug my foot and keep it down. I want to make sure my foot was locked down and not moving. A big problem skiers get is what we call a heel lift, which is when your heel is lifting out of your boot, right? And that can be caused by too much room in the top half of the boot, right? It's a very common one. So with this boot, I aired for a Solomon. That was a 3-piece buckle. I won't go too much into the detail on 3 versus 4. Just know they're very, very similar. For this case, it actually just helps snug up the area around my shin because I have a small ankle, small instep, kind of a smaller shin area. That helps snug it nice and tight, and that provided me the best performance, the best comfort, right? But I will almost always grab somebody a Solomon boot. They do high instep boots now as well that are designated for that. And I just love it. And you'll notice that they also do a lot of work on their liners. So they're very comfortable. So they tend to be about $100 more expensive than any other boot on the line. Okay. But it's fun to even just try them on. And so you can get an idea of what you're getting with it.
Yeah. Learn to Fern said, do you got any tips for putting ski boots on without giving yourself a hernia?
Yeah. Yeah. Great one there. So I will mention before I give you that, I want to hit real quick the last specifications, if you will, for sizing a boot. So we hit how to measure yourself, get the right size. I'm going to hit very briefly. What you're going to want is that your toes hit the end of the boot, right? When you first step in, that is normal.
That is crucial.
Yes. Most people are very uncomfortable with that. When you first put your shoes on, you're not expecting to slide your foot into the front of that boot, right? We don't need to worry too much about it. When you first step in, you're going to be touching. And if you notice, when you look at a ski boot, it's angled. Yeah. Right? That cuff actually has a tilt to it. And when you first step in and you're trying to stand up straight, you're standing at a 90-degree angle and the boot's trying to push you forward. So generally, you probably are going to have some space in the back of your foot by trying to stand at that 90-degree angle on a tilted boot, right? So what you have to do, you got to match the tilt. Right?
You got to lean into it.
Lean into it, and as you push against the front of that boot, especially if it's got the right stiffness, it's going to pull your heel backwards. You'll feel it, and that's going to pull your toes away from that edge. Usually, a proper fitting boot is you step in and you're like this, and you're like kind of toes are bent in, and then what happens is as you pulls back, it straightens out to where you're just brushing the end.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so if you're in a boot that's too stiff, you'll never be able to get it to flex out. And if you're trying a boot on in a shop and you're like, oh, I can get this to flex easily, or like I have to work kind of hard, but I can get it to flex. On the slope, it'll be harder because it's colder.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if you can flex it with, I don't want to say like super easily, but kind of a normal range of flex in the shop, then you're usually pretty good.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Love that you hit that. Then the last part is the last.
Yes.
Okay. Not many people are aware of what I say when I say the last width of your foot. You can use this when buying regular shoes, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Last width is usually the widest part of your foot, and it's going to be between the pinky toe and kind of the knuckle of the big toe.
Yeah.
Okay. Knuckle of the pinky, knuckle of the big toe. Even if you just look at your foot, you'll see where the widest part would be. All right. So that there on the forefoot is what we call the last width. Right. Now, ski boots are funny.
They are
because they give you a last width as a category and not always the exact measurement of your foot. Okay. So I'll just say when you're looking at a ski boot, and if you know, hey, I've got a wide foot, and even if you say you have a wide foot, doesn't always mean you do. Right. Sometimes it may mean your arch is falling, right? So this is where it's important, especially if you've ever had any foot issues, talk to somebody that's a pro. Okay. Talk to a ski tech. Send us a message. I'll call with you.
Yeah.
Right. And help you figure this out because it is such a crucial deal to have a nice fitting boot. But I'll just hit here the categories. If you've got a wider foot, you want your last width to be between 102 and 104 plus.
Yep.
Okay. That's going to give you the widest point here so you don't have pressure on the sides of your foot. Right. If you're more standard, kind of say Trent and I are probably more of a standard last width. A lot of people really will fit into that category. If you're not like used to saying I have a wide foot, you're probably standard.
Yeah.
Okay. 100 to 102 last width. And then if you're going narrower and you got a very narrow foot, it's going to be anything really below 100 in the last width.
Yeah. Usually the benchmark's about 98.
Yeah. Now these are categories. Okay?
Yes.
This is not the actual measurement of your foot.
And the thing that's weird is, so I'm on a 25.5 and he's on a 27.5. So this last on his is not going to equal what mine is. But since they're both like a standard last, they're both going to be categorized in the 100 millimeter last, right?
Yes.
So if you get a 30.5 boot and it says it's 100 last, that would destroy that person, right?
Yeah.
But really that just means it's a medium last, or like that standard fit. So
absolutely. So. Yes. Now, tips for putting on ski boots, because I love this question. Okay. Now, I want to show you with a few different boots here, because this boot, which is my own personal boot, as much as it's really not a great one to demonstrate on, because I'll show you with this one as I start to undo the buckles. First step, undo all the buckles, right? If you've got these little buckle micro adjustments, just turn them to the side, keep them out of the way.
Yep.
Okay. It makes a big difference. Pull your booster strap off, put it to the side, right? The first thing is going to be to pull the tongue straight out. Okay. Now, why this isn't a great boot is because this tongue actually has a shell piece. There's a shell tongue on it, which helps provide that downward pressure on the instep, which makes it so it actually restricts the pulling of the tongue out.
Right.
Okay. That's why it's not a great one to demonstrate on, but we'll show you on this boot.
So I'm opening mine so you can see a little better. So this is my personal boot. And what you want to do, like he said, is, usually a lot of ski boots look like this. This is more of a standard one. But it opens like this, right? Like that. And the tongue, if you push it down and to the side, it will actually open that up so you can get your foot in there much easier. You probably see my tremors on camera there. And it's really key to make sure you're opening that up as much as you can. Different boots open a little differently, but there's always a trick, and it's usually pulling out and then to the side.
Absolutely. So the most common mistakes we see, people, I always laugh. I'm up on the resort. I see this all the time. And people are up there and they're like trying to push as hard as they can. They've got two hands on this little flimsy sewed on fabric, right? And they're just pulling, trying to, thank the dear Lord if they get their foot in, right?
And then getting it off is a whole nother nightmare.
Yeah, and then they're just terrified for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Really what's happening, and it's the funniest thing, and I'm just sitting there laughing, and I just want to go over it. Sometimes I think I actually have.
I've done it before.
Yeah, I go over and be like, let me help you.
I'll help you, please.
Right? The problem is that if you're just pulling up on that tongue, that's not doing anything.
No, it's not doing anything.
You're pulling the boot towards yourself, but you're not changing the form of the boot at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part of the boot is not the interior, it's the exterior. right?
Yeah.
If I can go ahead and even just like pull this whole interior part out of the boot and it's soft.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like,
and oftentimes when you're sizing, we talk about a shell fit and a liner fit, which I won't get into because it's a little more detailed. So I'll skip it for this video. However, that's a common thing with ski boots, right? So to get them on, you need to actually open up the shell of the boot.
Yep.
Right. That's the hard part, that hard plastic. And like Trent mentioned, you have two pieces here. You're going to have a top part that wraps sideways and a bottom part that's going to overlap over top. So you got to open up first the top part of the ski boot by pulling that tongue out, right? That's going to naturally just open that up and then to the side. Okay. So we're opening up the top part and then to the side will help open up the bottom half of the boot.
Yep.
And honestly, it's going to be like putting on a shoe.
Yeah. It
should take you no more than like 3 seconds to get your foot in.
So that kind of touches on that one thing, to kind of wrap things up. One thing that's really important about owning boots or, taking care of your boots is you can see here, Austin is not planning on riding these tonight, right? Or for a while, I don't think, because we don't have any snow. Anyways, but he's doing it back up. That is key because your plastic has a memory, right? And if you leave it open and you leave it in your house and it's warm, it'll just stay in that shape and stay in that open shape. And when you try to close it, it will fight against you, right? But with these, when we buckle them back in, once we get it open, it'll just sling back into that position where it wants to be. And then it's so much easier to buckle up. And so that's how you take care of your boot. Just make sure it's clean and that you buckle it up when you're done.
Right. A lot of people think it's just, being, I don't know, OCD. Right. Like, oh, you just have to have your boots looking so perfect. I'm like, no.
Maybe a little.
Yeah. Buckle them up, keep them in good condition. Like we said, Trent and I bought our boots in like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
Been 5 or 6 years. Probably time for an upgrade just in the sense of like wanting one. But like these boots are going to last me at least another 5 years if I want. They could go more. There really isn't a lifetime to them as much as it is the liners that start to deteriorate.
Yeah. The liner will go before your shell does, right? So that's huge. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, we're kind of hitting the end of our episode here. So if you've got something, shoot it in the chat, and we can hit on it real quick, or it's something that we can move into our next episode.
Totally.
So I just want to wrap up briefly. We really haven't even been able to talk about really the boot fitting specifics. You guys can't see here, but I've got
he's got all sorts of stuff ready for us because we didn't know where this conversation was going.
Right. All sorts of material when it comes to fitting your boot. Now, the last thing I'll leave you with is like what Trent said. When you're buying ski boots and snowboard boots, the first, what you should look for is getting 90% of the fit correct.
Yeah.
Okay. It should feel fairly comfortable in the shop.
Yeah.
Right. The next step is pinpointing exactly where you can fine tune this, right? You could be skiing on it and just getting a little bit of lift in the heel, right? Maybe you just need to suction up a little bit of space in your boot. Maybe you are getting a little bit of a sharp pain in the ankle joint. There are things we can do to take care of that. We've got padding that we can add into boots. We've got the ability to expand and bubble out certain parts of the plastic. Usually that's much more of a last resort if we can.
Yeah.
But we can cater to people that have plantar fasciitis. We can cater to people that have what's that part of your toe that bulges out the side?
The sixth toe.
The sixth toe.
Or like a bunion.
A bunion, right? These things shouldn't stop you from having a great time on the mountain.
Yeah.
And that's really where Trent and I have spent numerous hours. Countless times helping people. And it's one of my favorite places to be in the ski shop because to see you get to see somebody go from almost like quitting the sport because they can't stand being up there anymore to then like reliving their joy memories of being out on the slope skiing like 2 feet of powder. And they're just like, dude, like I haven't done this in 20 years. I've had elderly people come in, usually are the ones coming in with feet problems as they age and muscles tend to start to relax and stretch and you start to have foot issues, right?
Yeah.
This shouldn't stop you from enjoying the mountain.
And one more thing that I'll leave you with is if you go into somewhere and you're like, my foot hurts because my boot is killing me. And the first thing they recommend is a punch or manipulation. You're at the wrong place. The first step should be a footbed. a footbed can fix a lot of issues. And so if your boot fitter says, do you have a footbed? And you say no, and he pushes you to get that, that should always be the first step before doing anything. So if you walk in and they're like, oh, like, let's punch it, it's going to be $60, you know, like that's probably not what you need.
Yeah.
So
love that you say that. Once you punch, you can't go back.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you can't
last
return
resort.
It.
Yeah.
So.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to discussing more topics with you next time. I don't think we've actually decided what we're going to hit next week. So, we got one more question that popped up.
Oh, nice. Other red flags for ski boots?
Ski boots and maybe ski shops there.
Oh.
Right? I would say really, and just wrapping this up, to stick with name brands. We've had people come in with brands that I've just never heard of, or things from like Walmart or something.
Yeah.
Right. It can be, you're not always going to know all of the name brands and whatnot. So she's really talking about the fitter.
Oh,
right.
When being fit by someone. Yeah. Oh, that is a great question.
So, well, I'll say, stick with majority popular brands, things that have plenty of reviews and companies that have been around a while. There are new brands that do pop up, and they can be worth a shot, but you should always try before you buy.
Yeah.
So,
and for your boot fitter, they should be asking you a lot of questions, like a lot of questions, because they need to understand who you are as a skier, and then they'll take a look at your foot. So if they're not asking a ton of questions, that means they either don't know what to ask, and so they're just going to go grab whatever. Some boot fitters, they can at least get you in the ballpark by not asking you these questions, but someone who's worth their salt will ask you a lot of questions to get to know you and what you need.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I'd say, like you said, they've got to be asking you questions. I do want to brief this too. We will do another video on getting that perfect fit in your boot, because that's just something I love.
Right.
So I'll show you guys how the boot fitting
Maybe
process goes. Yeah. And it's something that maybe even some employees can tune into and learn a little bit, so we can share some of our knowledge there. But I will say the first sign too is they better be sizing you.
Yep.
They are not going to go off your shoe size. Right. Rule number one.
Yeah. Don't go off your shoe size.
Always, I've heard a lot of people say always ask for a shell fit. If they don't know what a shell fit is, they usually aren't a designated boot fitter. However, it doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing specifically. You can address 90% of your issues, with a standard fit. But ask them to do a shell fit. Yeah. See what they say, or just say, hey, could we check out how a shell fit would be on my foot? It's a good common way to weed out somebody that's just trying to get you in a quick boot and get you out the door, versus somebody that's willing to spend the time to actually look at your foot and pull the liner out
and make sure you're in the right
fit. And if they don't know, they'll go grab their manager, and then they'll do it.
And they better know.
So
yeah. But we've been doing this, as we wrap up, we've been doing this podcast every 2 weeks. On Tuesday nights, and it's been going pretty well for us. Next time would be like the day before Christmas, or 2 days before. So we'll probably skip that one.
We won't be going the next 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, and so if you have any questions or comments, let us know, and we'll gear up to see you guys next year.
Yeah, excited. All right.
Okay.
Follow us on our Instagram. We'll send you our posts.
Yes.
Next episode.
Drop a like, comment, subscribe so you don't miss any videos, and have a great time on the mountain. Right.